Amid growing national outrage over the state of the British prison system, a new scandal has ignited debate in the House of Commons. The case of Axel Rutakuba, now known to many as the Southport Monster, has returned to the center of controversy, not for his past crimes, but rather for the unusual conditions he is reportedly experiencing behind bars, according to recent revelations. Far from facing the rigor of an exemplary sentence, Rutakuba, who allegedly assaulted a prison officer by throwing boiling water on him, is reportedly accessing consumer products like Maltesers and Pringles, as if he were in a break room and not a maximum security cell. The news has sparked a wave of indignation among citizens, prison officials, and parliamentary representatives. It was Robert Jenrick, with a stern tone and barely contained indignation, who raised his voice in the legislative chamber. Addressing the Labour Party caucus, he took aim directly at Shabana Mahmood, questioning how it was possible that individuals like Rutakuba continued to receive this type of treatment instead of being sent directly to total confinement, without any additional benefits. His tense intervention was an urgent call to protect those who are truly risking their lives inside these prisons, the prison officers. Jenrick did not hold back. He denounced the constant risk to the lives of these officials and warned bluntly that if serious and immediate measures were not taken, an officer could die under the current administration of the Ministry of Justice. He demanded the implementation of a universal supply of high-collar bulletproof vests, not just for a select few, but for all prisoners who face violence daily within prison walls. The response was not long in coming. With a defiant air, Shabana Mahmood spoke. She didn't deny the seriousness of the problem, but shifted the focus of the attack. She recalled that it was under conservative governments that levels of violence in prisons soared, and that those same administrations were responsible for the mass exodus of experienced officers, fed up with dealing with precarious and dangerous working conditions. Mahmood pointed out that what they are trying to remedy today is precisely this legacy of inherited chaos. He also lashed out at what he called eye-catching proposals designed solely to generate headlines, suggesting that Jenrick's demands, while partially valid, were tainted by political opportunism. And while the two exchanged accusations in firm voices, the rest of the parliamentarians, including those in the backbenches who could barely intervene, watched closely a dispute that was not only political, but moral. Robert Jenrick's face showed no hint of flinching from Mahmood's words. On the contrary, he leaned forward slightly, as if honing a response from the core, and with a firm voice, he took the microphone again. He reminded everyone that the discussion was not a contest of partisan blame, but a matter of life and death. "We're not talking about ideology," he said, "but about prison officers who go home each night not knowing if they'll see their families the next day." The room remained silent for a few seconds. Eyes met. Some members of parliament looked down at their notes, while others simply stared unblinkingly. The discomfort wasn't just due to the subject matter, but to the fact that, amid all the rhetoric, the entire country knew something was rotten in the prison system. Jenrick took advantage of the silence and added something more disturbing. What message do we send when a criminal who threw boiling water on a public servant ends up watching television and eating candy, while that injured officer recovers in silence with lifelong scars? The words carried weight. There was no easy retort. It wasn't an exaggeration or a dramatic device. It was the harsh reality. On the other side, Shabana Mahmood, visibly upset by the emotional turn of events, took the floor again. This time her speech was more technical. She spoke of statistics, ongoing reforms, and internal protocols. She listed rehabilitation programs and administrative improvements that she said would begin to bear fruit in the coming months. But as she spoke, her discourse seemed to distance itself from the human tragedy Jenrick had just brought to the table. The disconnect was evident. While one side spoke of urgency and physical danger, the other appealed to bureaucratic structures and future promises. And this emotional gap did not go unnoticed by anyone inside or outside Parliament. On social media, the issue was already boiling over. Clips of the exchange circulated with thousands of divided comments. Some defended the need to maintain humanitarian standards in prison, even for dangerous criminals. Others called for drastic and immediate measures, outraged by what they perceived as unjustifiably soft treatment towards someone who had proven to be a real threat. The figure of Axel Rutakuba thus became something more than a prisoner. He became a symbol of a system that, for many, has lost its sense of proportionality. Public opinion was no longer discussing him alone, but a larger dilemma. Can a modern democracy continue to protect individual rights from violent criminals while neglecting those who guard them. And amid all this crossfire, the real protagonists remained silent. The prison officers, men and women who every day enter a hostile environment where one mistake can cost them their lives, while outside the political debate seems more focused on posturing than on real solutions. As the session progressed, the atmosphere in the House of Commons grew increasingly tense. What had begun as a direct questioning of a specific case had morphed into a stark exposition of the fractures within the British prison system, but also, and more profoundly, into an uncomfortable mirror for the political class, caught between demands for justice, human rights, and an increasingly impatient citizenry. Jenrick, visibly irritated by the lack of concrete answers, did not miss the opportunity to point out what he called the divorce between parliamentary politics and real life. He accused the government of losing its moral compass by allowing people like Axel Rudakuba, who pose an active danger in prisons, access to a regime that could be construed as lenient if not complicit. "We are outraged when an officer ends up with second-degree burns," he stated, "but we do nothing when his attacker is given junk food and television. Is that justice? Is that rehabilitation? What part of this story can we explain with our heads held high to the family of the assaulted officer?" The words hit like a hammer blow, and although Mahmoud tried to respond, reiterating that structural measures were being taken, no one seemed to be listening attentively anymore. The feeling in the room was that the real debate was no longer between two politicians, but between two models of country, one that prioritizes exemplary punishment and another that insists on redemption, even in the most extreme cases. And in the midst of this ideological clash, a question as basic as it was uncomfortable remained. Where is the line between the rights of the aggressor and the dignity of the victim? Outside Parliament, the conversation quickly escalated. The press echoed the confrontation with inflammatory headlines. Some spoke of a soft justice system that rewards violence. Others defended the need to maintain humane standards, even in confinement, arguing that barbarism cannot be corrected with more barbarism. But among so many written and spoken words, there is something that has not yet been said enough. The real risk that prison workers face every day. Guards who, armed only with their uniforms and a sense of duty, enter an environment where the slightest carelessness can cost them their lives. And yet their demands remain relegated, their voices barely heard, and their rights seem less urgent than the privileges of those who rob them of their peace. Ultimately, the Rudakuba case is merely a symptom of a broader problem, a system that has failed to balance justice with common sense, where punishment is imposed without protection, and protection is imposed without correction. Now, the question is for you. Do you think someone like Axel Rudakuba should have access to privileges inside prison? Or is it time to redefine what justice truly means within the prison system? Leave us your opinion in the comments. We want to know what you think, and if you're interested in continuing to explore topics like this, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. See you next time. And perhaps the most alarming aspect is how quickly this issue has become politicized, used not as a catalyst for reform, but as ammunition in partisan battles. Instead of pushing for better training, safer conditions, or psychological support for prison staff, much of the debate has revolved around appearances, about who can sound tougher, who can denounce louder. In this climate, the real mission of the justice system, rehabilitation, protection, balance, is lost in the noise. What remains is a spectacle where outrage wins headlines, but solutions remain elusive.